All right, please do grab your seats if you would. We're very excited with our next part of our presentation. And then we will also be moving on to the cocktail reception. And while we're waiting for everyone to sit, who had a blast in their presentation just now in their workshops? Yes? Preach. We had a wonderful time in human wisdom. As you know, there were some technical issues, but thanks to Casey and Stanford for working on those. And at the end of the day, the main thing is the work got done. I went around to all the different committees, and I know there were some whatever, but the work got done, yeah? Okay, also, let's do one more wave. Ready? Here we go. Ready? Yeah. All right, if you missed it in the back, then that means you're not paying attention up front yet, and I really want you to cash up. Here we go. Ready? One more time. Here we go. All right. Oh, yeah. Give it up for the crew. The crew are in the wave. You're in the back, man. Appreciate it. All right, so we are really, really excited because at the end of a wonderful work session where we know that your brains are like, needing of some especially artistic and, fodder to kind of keep you going, we're so honored to have both Gabriela Aruta and Agnieszka Pilat. And if I mispronounce your name again, I'm tired, my bad. But I'm going to read the bios of these two amazing folks that we have to really lend a critical aspect to this work. We're really excited as we move forward. We may be adding an art-oriented chapter and committee to this work. And also what's obviously critical to understand is that sustainability, et cetera, is deeply connected to the aesthetic aspect of art, how we see the world, et cetera. So I'm honored to introduce Gabriela Aruta, who is an applied ethicist and philosopher of aesthetic civic discourse. She's additionally a fine arts professional with experience working with museums, auction houses, and in curating and presenting art exhibitions in the US and abroad. She founded Philo-Sophie Arts in 2017, a contemporary art gallery and progressive education organization dedicated to the advancement of critical thinking, art appreciation, ethical decision-making, and philosophy for children and adults. So thank you, Gabrielle. And next, after Gabrielle, we'll hear from Polish-born artist Agnieszka Pilat, who is best known for her series of heroic portraits of technology. She works and lives in New York and in San Francisco, and as a self-proclaimed machine chaser, she commutes between the East and West Coasts in pursuit of emerging technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, we're so excited to have this for you at the end of the day. Please give your full attention and kindness to these two wonderful folks.
Hi, folks. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm so pleased to be here at Stanford. Thanks so much to the organizers from HAI and to the folks at IEEE Standards Association for allowing art to be involved in this event. As John mentioned, I'm a philosopher of aesthetic civic discourse. And what does that mean? Folks might wonder. It's my belief that art is the location where social change can take place. And it is of the highest importance in order to bring people, adults and children, into communication with works of art so that they may inform their perceptions and learn to self-correct and change fixed beliefs in order to see the world in a more holistic and intersubjective manner so that the plights of people around the world that are different from them are brought into their lives, are internalized, and are somehow made better. And artists are the ones who are the best to do this for us. They give us this opportunity. I want to show some works of art to you today by painters, by sculptors, by NFT artists, by filmmakers that have incorporated some idea of sustainability practices and initiatives into their work. As I was preparing over the last few months I've been volunteering for IEEE and committee on AI ethics education, and then getting involved in Planet Positive, I was thinking of ways that I could incorporate sustainability practices into my own business, which can be overwhelming. There is so much waste in the art industry. I spent the early part of my career teaching philosophy traditionally in universities, and then found that unsatisfying, and wanted to do, to practice philosophy in a different manner, most particularly with children, but any way that I could get people in front of art to do it was going to be what I was pursuing. So I opened my own art gallery so that I could start my own school. And for every exhibition I do, and for the works of art that I attempt to sell and that are consigned to me, I engage people in a pedagogical practice called the community of inquiry in order to get folks to open themselves up to the message of artists. This first work of art, let's see, I'm not tech savvy, so I think that, oh, there's a button. So we're gonna watch this 28-second clip, this NFT from an Iranian-American artist named Marjan Mohaddam, which you saw earlier today. Okay, so that will be on repeat. Gentlemen, can we mute this as it runs on repeat for a second? Okay, thank you. So this work by Marjan, has anyone ever heard of Marjan Mohaddam? No? She is I believe, and many would agree, that she is the most important female digital pioneer in the art field. And she has developed something called the glitch goddess. And this is one of the examples of a glitch goddess that she's made. And this was a work of art that was commissioned by the Davos World Economic Forum in partnership with another art institution called World of Women, and also something called Code Green. So there was an NFT drop back in January for Davos, where it was all women making NFTs, and the sale of these works, this is not a work of art that I am selling or have any financial interest in, but in terms of the idea of caregiving versus competition, I think it's important for me to take the opportunity to promote something that I believe in, and so the purpose of the sale of this NFT, it's still available. It's been for sale since January. It's expensive. It's 10 Ethereum, which today is roughly $15,000. The sale of this work, when it sells, 70% of the proceeds will go to building the green wall across Africa. Has anyone heard of that? Yeah, okay, a couple people, not many in the room. So there is an attempt right now for over a decade. 11 African countries have been in the process of building 8,000-kilometer long wall of trees and fruit trees and bushes across Africa in order to mitigate climate migration, to overcome drought, to overcome famine, and to help ease unrest in these countries. However, 8 of the 11 countries are currently experiencing political unrest and tribal fighting, and only about 12% of the wall has been completed. It will be the largest global natural wonder of the world when it is completed, though, and the deadline is 2030. So I think that this is very much a part of our mission, and it will capture more carbon than nearly any other forest in the world. But something to take into account when we think of climate change and climate justice is gender justice. And 80% of the agricultural workforce in Africa is made up of women who are disproportionately disadvantaged by climate change. and who don't have access to education or health care or other initiatives. So these issues are tied together. We need to support women around the world. We need to do what we can do to help fulfill the mission to build this green wall. And artists that are engaged in initiatives like this need our support. This NFT is called Gaia of the Metaverse. Anyone know the term Gaia? The Greek goddess of the earth, right? So we see woman here in many different expressions, robust, slender, pregnant. She is all women of the world. She is the mother of the earth. She is walking on the earth. And it's the combination of the new and old, what happens here, on planet Earth, and also in the metaverse. Bringing these two entities together can help curb and climate change and restore the planet. So then I'd like to focus on this work of art. These two sculptures are part of a series of art by a young Mexican-American artist that I represent named Moises Salazar Tlatenchi. And the sculptures are from a series called Niñas, which is a gender-neutral term for children that Moises employs. These photos were taken in Big Bend National Park in Texas back in May. I did an art exhibition in Marfa, Texas, to focus on border justice issues and climate migration happening from Central Americans coming up to the US-Mexico border. In this area of Texas, Presidio County, a very unforgiving terrain of the Chihuahuan Desert, it was historically a place where illegal migration was not happening because it's so difficult to get through, to experience walking through this desert for 3 or 4 days in order to get to the nearest town. However, with the drought that has taken place and the illegal siphoning of the Rio Grande, the waters are not that formidable to cross now, and so it has become a location where more legal smuggling, human trafficking, coyotes are dropping people off in what, I've been down there now, it's like it's an oasis when you're down at the Rio Grande there. And then it takes about 20 minutes of walking before you get hit with a wall of heat that I've personally not experienced before. And I think that we need to focus on the relationship between illegal immigration and climate change in this country and around the world. And we need to focus on what happens to children. Presidio County has not given statistics for over 18 months as to how many unattended minors have been picked up by Border Patrol. And I would like to know those numbers. I would like to know what happens to those children. I learned through this process that an unattended minor is considered anyone who comes across the US border who's not with their mother or father. You could come with your grandmother, you could come with your sibling, you could come with an aunt or uncle. If you are not with a direct parent, the US government is taking you from that custodian and putting you in a detention center. And in some cases, we are adopting these children or losing track of them. These children are being abused in horrific ways, and they are climate refugees in a number of cases. So very thankful to Moises for making this body of work to draw attention to this. These are two other examples of the sculptures. So we had these in the gallery as well, but then took them down into the desert to photograph them in this setting. Moises also has been making a body of sculpture for the last several years called Cuerpos Desechables, which means the disposable bodies. And the skeletal underpinning of these sculptures are chicken wire and plaster, but as you can see, the outward appearance of these is paper mache, and they look like piñatas. And Moises began making this series when the rise of detaining children began. And often Moises accompanies them with space blankets because that's sort of the only thing being issued when folks first are put into detention centers for any kind of comfort. Back in April, Moises and I spoke at the John Dewey Society annual conference, which was in San Diego, and the subject this year was on border justice. And we brought Moises's sculptures to San Ysidro. The picture on the right is the US-Mexico border wall in San Ysidro, and experienced walking quite a bit of the length of the border there, and just kind of taking in the process of what's happening in this country, and the level of homelessness in San Diego is kind of overwhelming. It was my first time being there, and I don't know how many people are Americans sleeping on the streets in San Diego, or how many people are recent illegal immigrants that have come through, but it is something that we need to draw our attention to and to do something to mitigate. So I thank Moises for drawing attention to the plight of people all over the world who are fleeing for reasons of climate issues or other kinds of issues around safety. This, I believe, is going to be a video. Yeah. So. This next video is by an artist I really admire named Kenny Schachter, who has been making digital art for over 30 years, not very successfully selling it. The rise of NFTs in the last year and a half have brought Kenny a level of success he had never experienced before, which I think is exciting. And I was having a conversation with someone earlier about NFTs and their impact and whether or not they'll stick around. And I think the die-hard digital artists who have not had a platform to successfully sell their art over the last 20 years now have this great vehicle in order to promote themselves. I asked artists to make some works of art on sustainability, and Kenny made this video based on an experience he had in high school working on a chicken farm, and it's called Uncooperative, and it gets a little graphic. It's about a minute long, but we're gonna watch it. So that ended with the Italian artist Maurizio Catalan pecking out the eyes of mega art dealer Larry Gagosian, which might seem a little out of context, but I think it's an interesting analogy. Kenny wrote a statement about this piece. He said, "After graduating high school early, I worked on a farm in the chicken coop. When the birds reached a certain size, they were moved to larger premises where I was stationed. They were shifted via a small forklift and would arrive one load after the other in modified milk crates, where I was tasked with removing the boxes and shaking the chickens into their new digs. The thing is that the chickens were so scared at the unfamiliar setting that they would huddle together so closely that many of them would suffocate, despite the giant scale of the new space, or peck one another's eyes out from fear rather than spreading out into the new ample accommodations." This, again, to me, sounds like this analogy of caregiving versus competition, and I think that we find a lot of companies sort of trying to peck each other's eyes out to come up with better ideas, creative ideas, gain some financial competitive edge, and yet there is enough space for us to take up in order to do good in the world. And I think what we see is with environmental organizations, a level of competition amongst one another for attention, for financing, and we need to be working together. And then lastly, I wanted to show this work of art. It's a doll made by African-American artist Kimberly Camp, who's in her late 60s, who I have the pleasure of representing. Kimberly was my teacher almost 20 years ago at the Barnes Foundation. She's the first Black woman to run a major art museum in the Western world, and also has been a practicing artist for 55 years. She is very focused in her doll making on creating spirit guides and trying to tap into an understanding of her ancestral roots, even though she doesn't personally know where in Africa her family comes from. She likes to create these dolls and imbue them with a spirit of help and guidance. And so if you look at the coloration of this figure, it is meant to represent Ukraine, as we've seen a lot of artists do in the last several months. I think I haven't heard anyone mention the war in Ukraine these days, but certainly that is, not these days, but today, and that is certainly having an impact on the environment for people in Europe right now. But Kimberly told an interesting story with this doll, and was something that wasn't drawn to my attention until she made this, and that was the fact that Black and brown people trying to leave Ukraine in the early days of the war were denied access to get into Poland and other parts of the world. And so Kimberly wanted to make this spirit guide in particular to protect those people on their journeys to safety. And I think we're all in need of some kind of spirit guide, some kind of Gaia to help us deal with the struggles day to day to find our place in the world and to do what we're capable of doing to make the world a better and safer place. And so I'm very appreciative of having been able to show this work in Texas as part of our show on border justice. And it was also very interesting to me when I was in San Ysidro at the U.S.-Mexico border to see that there were thousands of Ukrainian refugees that were coming across the border there, which they had gained refugee status, and rightfully so, but there were hundreds of Mexican people who had been on waiting lists for years to come into this country. And it's interesting to see the priorities that we have with who deserves safety, who deserves protection. And that is analogous to what parts of the environment are we protecting, and where is the funding going to protect the environment. So those are my slides, and I have the great pleasure now to introduce you to Agnieszka Pilat, who's another artist that I've started working with over here, and what I'm trying to do in the art world is to combine art and philosophy in a new way. There are very few models for how to exhibit and sell art today. There's now online exhibitions, there are fairs, there's the traditional gallery show, there are museum shows. But I think that art needs to enter our consciousness in a different way, and to bring artists into the conference circuit, and to give artists the opportunity to speak at academic conferences is what's going to allow these sustainability issues and initiatives to enter the zeitgeist, enter our subconscious, and go from us to children so that the world can be a better place, and that we'll still be able to be here, centuries to come. So thank you very much. Support your artists and find vehicles to encourage those in your life to take up sustainability initiatives. I didn't think that it was going to be an important part of my practice, but thanks to IEEE SA, I want to do as much as I can to make this a continual part of the mission of my business. So thanks very much.
So I'm a little whimsy and funny, so it's going to be a bit less serious. But I'm going to start with this, that yes, I was born in Poland when it was still behind the Iron Curtain. And in 1989, when the wall came down, the first thing my father did, and a lot of people in Poland did, it was buying a Western car. And it was a very needed instrument, of course, practical to build a business, but also it was something else. It was a promise of better future. So you might wonder, why am I telling you this? So the truth is, I am not really an expert on sustainability. In fact, I work with robots who are maybe not the most sustainable creatures right now. But I celebrate technology in my work because I really believe technology is the best tool we have to go into a better future. So how did I end up working with technology? So on the right side, you see this is a painting of mine I did a number of years ago. It was done at USS Hornet Museum aircraft carrier. It's a piece of machinery from an old plane, and it's dressed and it's very formal. It's like a portrait. So I was trained as a portrait painter with human sitters. But when you think about portraiture, portraiture really represents power in society. So you don't have to know history. You go to a museum, look at the wall, and you see who held power. So religious, of course, royal. Fast forward maybe the Dutch when the first capitalist society was coming, so a lot of portraiture of wealthy merchants. Fast forward America, Andy Warhol, celebrity or obsession with celebrity. Again, I grew up in Eastern Europe, so behind the walls, so working class. That was the portraiture. Right now, this is the me society, so selfies, right? Selfies #1 portraiture in the world right now. And I would argue that the next stage, the power is going to the machine fast. So that's why I work for the machine. I tell people I don't work for the man, I work for the machine. Machines are my patrons, and I treat them as human sitters. So this machine here shows up, dressed up very formally and dignified. So that's what I try to do for the machine and for technology. Now, a lot of power comes with a lot of responsibility. And also with a promise of utopian future that's probably much better than what we have right now. So we expect from power, we expect perhaps better future, and we start worshiping these ideas. And of course, cathedrals are representations. That's what we do as humans. So what you see on the right side, this is a painting I'm just working right now. I started working at SpaceX. I'm artist in residence at SpaceX now. And this is a work in progress piece of a diptych. I'm going to create a series of diptychs with really heavy religious overtones, so I borrow heavily from iconography, so gold leaf, halos, but it all goes back to one word that connects religion and technology, and that word is salvation. So I think we look to technology for salvation, and rightfully so, I think. And there's other parallels, of course, like again, I think going back to Poland, my childhood, I think the cathedral in Poland now is the shopping mall because we are very excited being part of the West. In Silicon Valley, it's probably an Apple store. And in the future, perhaps it will be the launching pad for a Starship. And now, I'm going backwards my slide. Okay, so next slide, sorry. So another topic that connects technology, religion, and art is, of course, dying. So if you go to the lobby, and by the entrance, I brought a small installation. I call it Memento Mori. So we deal in art very often, the subject of Memento Mori is very present because we deal with very important, timeless subjects. So when we think about technology, because it's so present in our lives right now, it needs to be really part of the ecosystem, and to be truly the part of the ecosystem, it has to start engaging in the life cycle like all of living organisms. So I don't like thinking about technology or machines as some creatures that are foreign to our ecosystem. I think they're part of the earth, they are our partners, but again, we're still missing that last moment of how do we retire technology in a peaceful way so it becomes part of our ecosystem. So that's kind of that piece talks about this a little bit. Now, as much as in Memento Mori and dying, it's all very important in my work because it's semi-religious work in that sense, but this is a society, in our culture right now, we're obsessed with youth and we adore the young. So I work with robotics. Spot is Boston Dynamics, one of the companies that I work with. I spend a lot of time there. I have, in fact, Spot in my studio in New York. And when I painted a series of paintings with Spot of portraits, and I used a totally different palette. So when you see the color palette, it's very silly, it's very colorful. So in human years, I would say these new technologies are like children, at best very young teenagers. And that goes also to, I not only look at them as my muses, but also in apprentices in a sense. So thinking how in the old, let's say in the Renaissance, in the guilds, masters would take young apprentices and would teach them how to paint. That's how kind of I look at our robots, but also this is their entry into culture. So we are in sense responsible how we treat these new technologies that are really on the level of children to enter into the world and have more power. So not only I painted a number of portraits of Spot, but also I used Spot as my creative companion. And as much as we might deplore certain aspects of teenagers, or again, these new technologies that provide a lot of problems, perhaps, I think there's a couple of things that really are admirable. It's curiosity for young people, and also the enthusiasm. So if I bring Spot out, there is so much enthusiasm around it. It really opens people to technology, especially young girls, actually. They're very excited. So when I create work with Spot, I do everything that is not expected from the machine. So from machine, you would expect work that's very, of course, mass-produced, very unoriginal, very predictable. When I work with robots, there's this little space when you think it's an encounter with another mind, and that's very engaging, and it's really a very big part of my work. That's why it's very whimsical. And it goes back also to the idea that robots, unlike the metaverse, they really operate in nature, so they really have to mimic and respect the laws of nature and physics. That's why I'm optimistic overall about robotics. And this is just to give you an example of how I work with them. So let's see. So this is agility robotics. This is Digit. I just started working with Digit recently. And this is the first work we did together. So also the visual aspects of the work being created, it's very silly because, again, these machines are, at best, young children. I'm gonna forward to the oops, go back. How do I do this? Oops. Well, I wanted to show you how Spot is working. It's going to be over, but it's OK. And Spot has a totally different personality. So this is my work also with Spot. Sorry, it's... So again, the idea really that feeling of a encounter of another mind and something totally whimsical and unpredictable. So this is, in short, I'm going to be short, this is my manifest for the future. So I think to change the planet, I think technology is an amazing tool. In my family, that car really delivered. And for all of Poland, the fact that we opened up and brought technology from the West changed the country tremendously, for me personally and for the family. So I think I'm overall very optimistic about technology. And yeah, that's my artist manifesto. Thank you so much.
Thank you both so much. What a great way to end our day, right? To have a wonderful aesthetic sense of, how to move forward with nature, how to move forward with technology, our wonderful partners at Stanford in terms of how our robotics and AI are going to be part of our future. So again, just a round of applause for the presentation. A quick couple of announcements for any chairs or moderators or scribes. All we ask is that you keep a safe copy, not just in the cloud, but like in a Word document on your hard drives, because the harvesting work, as Mila called it, for the past 3 or 4 hours. Thank you, all of you who provided your insights and thoughts to the first draft of Strong Sustainability by Design. Huge thank you to you. And is Micah still in the room? Micah, are you here? Micah? Oh, maybe she's outside. Okay, no pressure to Micah. Micah is going to say a few words, and maybe we'll ask Konstantinos to say a couple of words. Micah, do you want to close us out, or wanted to defer to you? Yeah, well, let's get you on camera, and I'll say a couple things while you're walking up here. This is the last part of today while Micah walks up. Tomorrow, just to let you know, we have one more panel. And then what's going to be really fun, we've done this before in other events, is that each of the committees will have a moderator or moderators, more than one person, report back from all the different committees. And the logic there is it's the beginning of our cross-pollination process, where you'll probably begin to see patterns start to emerge between the different committees and chapters. And that is the goal. When you're like, I'm not sure how it's all going to fit together yet, we don't either, but that's part of the process as we move forward. So thank you again. And to close us off, before we go to our cocktail reception, wanted to have our chair, Michael Lucan, close us out.
Well done, my friend. Terrific. Thank you very much. Beautiful. This morning we did the welcome, and we did a bit of thank you. Right now it's a big, huge thank you. And the thank you goes for fantastic presentations, fantastic panels, great work in the committees, and people being really creative. So why was I not in the room? Because I got, moved out, and the first development of a new standard was proposed. So the work is coming out of the work we are doing. We are seeing progress, and we'll see more tomorrow. So have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you tomorrow. Fresh, new ideas. Well, of course. So thank you very much. There is the door to the beautiful outside, or the doors, and refreshments. Thank you very much. Enjoy the evening.